Okay, here we go to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have another prototype preview for you from a brand that was on the channel once before. They're basically an independent micro brand based out of Singapore. They are MMI, I believe. And this is their Turret 300 model. And basically, of course, this is a dive watch. Some key common characteristics and sign language. When you're looking for a dive watch, you're going to want water resistance, typically through some type of screw down crown, something that's tough, legible with a dive time bezel, and then a diver's extension is always nice if on bracelets. Now, this particular prototype, dubbed the Turret, will be going live on the 27th of December in 2020. And basically the design concept was inspired by the ironclad naval warship, the USS Monitor. Definitely check their Kickstarter for the latest pricing. But you know, this thing's pretty cool. It's a 40 millimeter diameter, not too thick at just 13.3 millimeters thick there, and then 47 millimeters lug to lug. Very nice in terms of kind of the sizability. And one thing that makes it a little bit different is with that 40 millimeter width, you're actually getting 22 millimeter lugs. So it just has a little bit of a beefier aesthetic to it. So with all that said, let's go ahead, pick these pieces up, and take a closer look. Okay guys, so you see you have two basic setups here. They're quite different. You can see one is a no-date model with this really cool horizontally brushed dial, which may or may not be picked up super well on the camera. There you go. At an angle, that definitely helps. Bam. Look at that. So it definitely renders as more of a gray versus a black, although when reflecting back into a black camera lens, it's going to appear very black. And then the other option here is this really cool kind of cutout date there. So the dial does stay ultimately, you know, really quite symmetrical, which I think obviously a lot of people really enjoy when it comes to divers. Now, we already went over the specs, but really the thing here that makes these watches special is their proportions. You have wider lugs and a wider lug width. So although this is a 40 millimeter, it's going to have quite a bit of wrist presence, which is always really nice. We do have Sapphire Bezel with inner AR coating. It's a flat sapphire, as you can see. Ooh, man, look at that dial. This is a really cool dial, and I think the choice to do with the horizontal brushing, look at that, very, very cool. So this bezel actually is 120 clicks unidirectional, and this is a prototype, so 9 times out of 10 they improve these. There's a little bit of play, a little bit of give there, but you can get it to line up, which is really, you know, the most important thing, at least I think for most people. And this bezel insert, as you can see, it's quite glossy. Let me give it a quick little wipe here. It's quite glossy, but it's actually not ceramic. The nice thing is it is actually ion plated steel. So basically IP coating there. It's nice and glossy, fully polished. And then you actually do have a fully loomed bezel insert. Now inside, ticking away, is your Seiko Instruments NH35, which is pretty much the equivalent to the 4R35. So works out really well from that standpoint, although it's going to have a little bit of a slower tick there. You're going to only be getting 6 ticks a second versus 8 ticks a second. It still does well enough and also is quite shock resistant. As far as this dial goes, you do get the really nice horizontally brushed finish, which, whew, man, that thing looks great. And you get applied indices, you're getting Swiss Superluminova, you're getting C1 grade A, as they say, and then on the case back, you're getting it solid and nicely etched, and you're getting some quick release pins there on the bracelet that actually stick out quite a bit. So these are much easier to grasp, which is a nice feature. I guess as long as you don't have a super meaty wrist, otherwise I could see these maybe sticking in. So we'll see how that wears when we get it on wrist. So of course here it's much of the same in terms of the bezel layout and action, but let's just, for the sake of it, Yep. Yeah, very nice. You know, nothing crazy, but definitely quite good. So, and then of course we get into this bracelet. We do have a 22 millimeter lug width. So what that does is it just kind of widens the overall profile, and I think it does flow well with the more expansive dial and then the smaller bezel insert. Having this a little bit wider shoulders, it just gives it more of a feeling of substance. And although a 40 millimeter watch is typically a lot of people's sweet spot, the nice thing is this can give you a little bit more visual weight without actually affecting the physical wearability, which I can definitely appreciate. We do have these cool H-links here for the bracelet. It's push pin connectors, and then we do have a push button flip lock clasp with 5 adjustments. So as you can see, bam. And then actually one thing you'll notice is I didn't size the bracelet on this one, so I wanted you guys to see this thing comes pretty big. This one is sized to my 7 1/4 inch wrist over here on the left, and then we do have it basically unsized. So I was able to actually remove 3 links and make this thing pretty wearable. So with all that said, let's actually get these, well, at least this one that's been sized on wrist for a closer look and just to see how it wears. All right, guys, as you can see on my 7 1/4 inch wrist, this really wears quite well. Flows really well, not super tall, really nice high polished bevels there. And then of course that dial, quite captivating with that kind of gradient light roll because of that horizontal pull brush across. And then you can even see a hint of anti-reflective coating, which works really well. And you know, I think these are both really good looking watches. The white dial, definitely that's something that's popular right now, white dial, black bezel. But one thing that makes it stand out, again, is this really cool cutout system for the date. So I'm digging that. And yeah, the wear's pretty good. Honestly, I don't feel the bars poking, as you can kind of see underneath. They don't actually reach my wrist, the quick release bars, so they are tucked away nice enough. So the nice thing is they stick out enough to where while the watch is off you can manipulate them, but when they're on the wrist they actually don't stick out enough to where you're even gonna feel anything. So I gotta say that is really a quite nice feature. So let's go ahead, set up for some loom shots, low light transition, and closing thoughts. All right, we'll go ahead and hit the lights here. As you can see, that C1 is really quite nice. You know, with the studio being fully lit, they appeared quite white. They weren't, you know, any type of tint of green or yellows. So that was really great. And then when you look, it's actually a really nice green hue. Nothing super bright, don't get me wrong, but considering the fact that it's not like there's a ton of lume applied, it is really well applied because you know, it actually is quite legible in the dark. But one thing I like to do during these loom shots is actually work in some low light transition, just so you can get a better idea of how these watches will appear and how colors will render and finishes will come off in less than optimal lighting, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. Sometimes you're going to be walking you know, in and out of a building, underneath an overhang, or underneath a tree, or maybe you'll be spending time in your favorite vehicle. So you're not always going to be in that optimal studio lighting. So yeah, sometimes it's good to see that. And these are of course prototypes, so there will be quite a few imperfections, but you can see the way that the light glides across those stainless steel links there. And wow, does it really play with that gray dial. Very nicely. Look, it looks pretty much like a black dial, and then boom, look at that texture. Beautiful, really well done. And you can see the nice luster in that IP coated glossy bezel insert. So really quite nice on a lot of different accounts. All right, guys, so closing thoughts, you know, on the wrist, the wider 22 millimeter lug width with that 40mm case proportion. I think it makes it feel larger without actually affecting wearability, so that's nice. You're getting a lot of visual weight, but it's technically still kind of within that sweet spot of wristwatches. As far as model variations go, there are tons of options in the works. Definitely check their Kickstarter for details. I will have a link in the description. As far as comparable models go, you know, these are pretty common specs within the space, you know, to be quite honest. But I think they're a combination of modern styling and symmetrical kind of no date / date ring options. I think they give the turret a really unique vibe. Although I think at face value, they're, you know, they could be specified as, you know, just another microbrand diver. I think there's a little bit of personality there and some real design pizzazz, which I can appreciate for sure. Of course, these are prototypes, so the finished models that you guys would receive if you ordered are going to be much nicer, of course, and they're not going to be bruised or damaged or scratched up from kind of doing the review rounds. So guys, for these, you know, the bottom line, if you're one of those people who kind of always are on the search for a new fresh diver, which there are tons of them, guys, you know, you might need to check these out. I feel like there's a big demographic of people that just, man, all they do is collect divers. And these are one of those ones where I feel like they do add something a little bit different, but still quite familiar and enjoyable to really any collection. So with that said, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you like the video, please do a like. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.